Bit.com 期权合约转嫁风险，让您不再害怕未来。
Guys, welcome back to TALKCHAIN channel. Today we've invited the first ever decentralized trading protocol, Bancor Network, to join our AMA. Bancor V1 has been announced recently, and I can't wait to hear more from the team. Let us welcome the guest of today, Mark, Head of Research of Bancor, and Head of Growth, Matt Hindman. Hi, you guys.
Hello. Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for joining. And can you guys give me a brief introduction about Bancor and some background of yourself as well?
Sure. Nate, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. As you said, Bancor is the first DeFi protocol. We launched in 2017, and it is a way to trade your cryptocurrencies and also to stake and earn yield on your cryptocurrencies by providing them to the exchange. And Bancor is a decentralized exchange. I've been with the project for about 3.5 years, and I head up growth and marketing.
And I'm the head of research now, but I started my my work for Bancor actually originally as just a community member. It's just a member of the DAO. And so when Bancor launched the DAO back in October of last year, I was quite active in the channels and helping to sort of establish some of the first policies by which the Bancor DAO runs. And I started to collaborate with the core contributors of the project, and was eventually offered a full-time position, continuing to work as I was. And since then, I've developed products for Bancor, such as the Bancor Vortex. And I also designed, the core elements of Bancor version 3.
Oh, I see. Okay, cool. We'll get into about Bancor V1 and also Bancor DAO later. But now, sure. I would like to ask, what do you think is the major problem facing by liquidity provider, and how Bancor is trying to solve that?
Yeah, certainly. So I can take this one. I think that the biggest problem that's facing liquidity providers in decentralized finance is that the projects that they are providing liquidity with are asking them to take on quite a considerable financial risk, but it makes no effort to educate them about what that risk is. And so this risk is called impermanent loss, and it's one of the things that Bancor kind of helped to define and describe with the launch of the bonding curve liquidity pool product back in 2017, and after we had a chance to observe how it works. And so I think that this is hugely problematic, because if we want DeFi to be something that is suitable for mass adoption, right, I think that it is critical that users feel safe knowing that the value that they've contributed to the protocol of their choice is protected. And unfortunately, that's just not the status quo. So if we recently published a paper on Uniswap version 3, which detailed just how catastrophic the losses are for liquidity providers using that protocol. And this is generally well appreciated by people who have been in DeFi for a long period of time. But for newcomers, there really isn't much warning when you enter into some of these protocols that it's the type of financial risk that you take on. And so Bancor really is standing in opposition to that mentality, right? We want liquidity providers to be secure, knowing that whatever value that they provide, that they will always be entitled to withdraw precisely that amount of value from the protocol, plus all of the fees and rewards that they get on top of that. So that's one major issue. The other major issue is that it is common for DeFi liquidity protocols to demand that users provide liquidity with a prescribed basket of tokens. So if you want to hold just one token, like maybe you really love Ethereum, or maybe you really love Chainlink, and maybe you want to provide liquidity with that, it's common that on certain liquidity protocols that you can't, that you need to sell some of that token to buy another token and provide liquidity with both simultaneously. At Bancor, we also reject that this should be necessary. And so we've developed what we call single-sided staking. And that means that whatever tokens you want to hold in whatever ratio you want to hold them, you can provide liquidity with your entire portfolio. And that's okay, right? We don't force you to own tokens that you don't want to own. So I'd say that these are the two biggest issues, and that there are some other nuances associated with those. But yeah, if I had to summarize it, I think that those are the biggest issues facing liquidity providers across DeFi, and this is how Bancor is attempting to address those issues.
Okay, cool. And you have mentioned about impermanent loss. Can you briefly introduce a little bit about impermanent loss insurance? So
the impermanent loss insurance is basically this. When you provide liquidity to Bancor, it's still being used to make markets. And so that means that if you're providing like ETH or something like that, you are giving permission to the protocol to sell and buy ETH on your behalf. And so generally, if the price of ETH is going up, that means up relative to BNT. That means that the market is purchasing the ETH out of that protocol, right? The demand for that token is going up, and so people are purchasing it. And that means that BNT is kind of coming in from the secondary markets and accumulating on the other side of the pool. And then the opposite is also true. If the BNT price is outperforming ETH, then in general, the protocol is selling BNT into that secondary market and absorbing ETH back from that secondary market. And so there's always this kind of seesaw mechanism occurring where the asset that is outperforming the other one is usually being sold off and the underperforming asset is being purchased. Now, when that's occurring, the protocol is still accumulating fees, and those fees are awarded to users. And so if you only have one pool in the entire network, it's very, very difficult to evaluate how risky it is with regards to this price divergence. So you can think of it as, something like insurance on anything, like insurance on a house, right? If someone says, I'm creating an insurance company, but I'm only going to insure one person's house, right? It's the same as the person who is owning the house not having any insurance, right? In general, what you want is to distribute that risk over a very large number of potential policy holders. And that makes the risk more predictable, right? As the number of insured entities increases, the predictability of that risk becomes knowable. And so this is Bancor's approach. We say that we will ensure the value of all of your deposits across the entire protocol. And we can do that because the protocol has so many different assets in it. We now have something like 140 different assets in the protocol. And so even though the insurance risk on one of these pools might be getting quite high, the rest of the protocol in general is generating fees sufficient that we can offset the risk of that. So the protocol is always shooting to break even, right? So it's kind of like the world's most generous, insurance company, because it never takes anything for itself. It only wants to make sure that the users of the protocol are getting are getting the value that they're entitled to. So if there is ever a case where the protocol doesn't have enough of the token that you provided, it will give you its own token, BNT, sufficient for you to buy back the token that you're missing. I've recently described this as being similar to any kind of insurance, where, for example, if you insure your car and you crash your car, the insurance company doesn't give you a new car, they give you the value of that car. They give you cash, right, to buy another car. And so the protocol has its own cash system that it uses to reimburse you. And if you want to, you can use that to purchase the tokens that you're missing, or you can just keep the cash, right? It's completely up to you. That's how the insurance policy works. For this service, right? For this ability, for this peace of mind that liquidity providers have where they're not going to lose money, the only thing that the protocol takes is a 15% cut of the fee revenue that is generated across the protocol. So it never takes any money from your principal. So if you deposit $100, it will never take money from that money. But if you earn $100 in swap fees, the protocol will take $15 of that as an insurance premium to help pay for the insurance of the protocol. So essentially, Bancor is no longer just a DEX, right? It is now both an exchange and an insurance company at the same time. And so that's essentially the model that we've implemented. And the specifics of how we use that insurance premium is probably going to go into too much detail for this answer. But I hope that that's given a general overview of how we achieve what we achieve.
Okay, thank you. I think this is quite detailed. Even when we try to explain what is the impermanent loss insurance of Bancor, we can go that deep and give that much of insight. So I think that was a great answer. Thank you so much, Mark.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And I believe that Bancor, as one of the pioneer DeFi protocols since 2017, you have mentioned just now, has done a lot of improvement and innovation throughout the years. Could you share with us the evolution story from V1, V2, and V3, which is coming soon?
Yeah, Nate, do you want to take the V1 history?
Yeah, sure. So Bancor started in late 2017. We were the first to market ever with the model for a liquidity pool. So it was very novel at the time. We spent the first couple years really understanding the power of what we had created and observing users using it and really getting some product market fit to understand that it could be used both to trade large volumes of tokens. Today now, AMMs and liquidity pools process over 10 billion in volume a day collectively, and Bancor processes hundreds of millions in volume each week. And this was really the first kind of phase of Bancor, is really proving the model as a way to process large volumes of trading. Now, we discovered impermanent loss very early on, and how if the two tokens in the pool change in value, a user can pull out way less than they provided. And so in around 2020, we came up with V2, which is our first mechanism and the first mechanism in the industry for impermanent loss protection and single-sided liquidity. As Mark explained, you can provide just one token, stay exposed to that one token, and when you pull out, be insured against impermanent loss, so that you pull out at least what you put in plus fees and mining rewards. And so V2 was very experimental for its time, and that we spent the sort of past year really refining and learning a lot from this new single-sided impermanent loss protected model. Now, V3, which we just announced the features to about 2 weeks ago and are just now explaining to the community, really takes the learnings of the past year and totally redesigns the protocol to remove quite a few points of friction that we've noticed our users face, and really lay the groundwork for the next evolution of Bancor, which we really haven't revealed the majority of, that will come in the second and third phases of V3. V3 will be rolled out in 3 phases. So we can dive into the individual features of Bancor V3 right now, if that would help.
Yes.
The kind of high level features that we can discuss. First, the impermanent loss protection used to take 100 days of staking to accrue. So you earned it over time and you were protected over time. Now in V3, you will be 100% protected from impermanent loss from the day you stake. So we're calling this instant impermanent loss protection. And then you'll always be able to withdraw what you provided plus fees and rewards. We've also deployed and are deploying in V3 something called the Omnipool. Whereas before, Bancor was made up of a network of many different pools, and as a BNT holder, you had to decide which pool you wanted to provide your BNT to. Now you'd provide your BNT to a single pool that aggregates revenue from all the pools in the network. So it's a simpler experience for BNT holders, and they don't have to choose which pool they provide to. And this also gives us a lot of gas savings in the network for both trading and for staking. Before, Bancor trades required several hops, a transfer of BNT, And now there's single hop trading. So this saves a lot on gas, and Bancor as a protocol and the liquidity providers can attract way more volume with less liquidity. There's also something called Omnipools that we've just announced, which are effectively allowing us to offer unlimited staking to users. Now in V2.1, there were caps on the pool. So there was sort of space caps that prevented users from depositing as much liquidity as they wanted. You had to wait for space to open up in a pool if a pool reached its cap. Now, there's no waiting for space. You can provide as much liquidity as you want to these infinity pools. A portion of your liquidity is used for trading, so to do market making that you can generate fees off of trades in the pool, whereas a portion of it can be implemented in something we're calling strategies that can earn additional yield for liquidity providers. So very high level, what we've done in V3 is we're allowing liquidity providers, people who stake their tokens in our protocol, to earn more on their funds while really doing less. So they don't have to decide which pool to stake to. The rewards are also, I haven't mentioned, auto compounding. So you earn liquidity mining rewards and you don't have to manually restake them, which costs gas each time. The rewards are just automatically redeposited into the pool so you can compound your gains. And that's really the sort of ethos of V3, is to earn more on your tokens with doing less and having to spend less time and capital to get those earnings.
Okay, thank you, Nate. Yeah, I think it's pretty much well explained about Bancor V3, but it kind of reminded me about DeFi 2.0. Like, I'm not too sure is it something related, but may I know what do you think about DeFi 2.0 from your view, from your point of view?
I have some pretty strong feelings about DeFi 2.0. In general, I think that the ambition of DeFi 2.0 is good. Right, and that is that it's a collection of projects that has identified a systemic problem in how the economics of DeFi was constructed following, let's say, the invention of liquidity mining by synthetics, and that it has basically observed that this liquidity mining culture that we have, even though there's no reason to panic about it, like I don't think liquidity mining over the next year or even 2 years is something that we need to collectively be concerned about. But we do need to have plans to sort of wean ourselves off of it, right? It's definitely a part of the bootstrapping phase of DeFi, right? In order to drive adoption. But eventually, revenue has to be the sole determinant for the APY that a liquidity provider is likely to receive. DeFi 2.0 had a different idea, which is that it can use a type of bonding mechanism in order to permanently transfer liquidity from a user to a protocol. And that means that it takes the pressure off of the protocol to constantly incentivize the user. This is dangerous, I think. The reasoning behind it is that the bonding mechanism that they're using, the type of tokens that they are offering to their communities, it is a bond for nothing, right? I've compared a lot of these DeFi 2.0 protocols to essentially being a yield aggregator, something like YFI or something like AutoFarm, but where you can never get your money back out of the protocol, right? It issues you a token instead, and that you can never then redeem that token for the capital that you provided. And I think that element of DeFi 2.0 is broken. So I think that in general they identified something that was problematic, right? That certainly the issue that they wanted to address is worth addressing, and we should have a longer, as an industry, we need to have a more thoughtful discussion about what we're going to do about incentives and the sustainability of our ecosystem. But I don't think that any of the solutions that have been offered by the DeFi 2.0 movement are very good. I don't want to name any of them in particular, but I'm sure that you know which ones that they are. You know, in the beginning, I felt like alone in my skepticism. You know, it seemed like everybody was getting excited about it, and I was kind of cautious, telling people, you know, be careful. I'm not sure that that makes much economic sense. And it was just recently that the Senate in the United States have actually identified a couple of these projects as being actual Ponzi schemes. You know, and that's a big issue when we're trying to put on, you know, our best face when we're talking to regulators in order to get sort of DeFi accepted globally, right? And you know, getting these products established in a mainstream sense. So I'm worried that maybe DeFi 2.0 has probably caused a little bit more damage than it has, you know, contributed anything positive. But I could be wrong. You know, let's wait and see. I don't know the future. Maybe I'm just stupid, and they're quietly geniuses sitting on a brand new economic model that no one but them understands. And so I pay that. You know, I can't pretend to have sort of omniscient intelligence or something. But at the same time, I think that we would be wise to be cautious about the future prospects of the DeFi 2.0 strategy and any of those protocols.
I will say that Bancor, it seems, has heavily inspired many of the DeFi 2.0 protocols, and they do share some features. One of the sort of key features that's part of so-called DeFi 2.0 that Bancor has had in its system since V2 is something called protocol controlled liquidity, or PCL. And that is effectively saying, well, let's create a DAO and have the DAO members control an amount of liquidity that they can add to certain parts of the network in order to spark, let's say, growth in certain parts of the network. So Bancor has an elastic supply in BNT. And what this means that it can effectively do is use its BNT, its protocol-owned liquidity, to generate sort of an on-chain treasury within the protocol that it can then vote on to use to, let's say, provide liquidity to a certain token that is on the network that is generating a lot of volume or that is brand new. And by providing liquidity to that token, it can enable capacity for other users to add liquidity and generate fees in a way where they're protected from impermanent loss, and they can do it in a single-sided way where they're only exposed to the one token they want to provide. And so this is kind of this idea of protocol controlled liquidity that allows a protocol to vote on where it wants to incentivize behavior is, I think, something that's very powerful and something that we are doubling down on in Bancor V3. We're allowing the protocol not only to seed pools with liquidity so that the token is more liquid on our exchange and generates more fees and volume. We're also allowing the protocol to shrink the amount of liquidity that it's provided to a token and divert our protocol controlled value to other more profitable parts of the network that generate more fees for the protocol and BNT holders and LPs. So this idea of protocol controlled value, I think, will become more and more important and a common feature in a lot of DeFi projects. And I think it's really something that Bancor pioneered with its V2, and that is advancing it even further in our V3 version.
I think the main difference, just to draw a clear line in the sand between what Bancor is doing and what I think DeFi 2.0 is doing, is that on Bancor, you're still always able, as a user, to retrieve the value that you contributed, right? So if you deposited a certain amount of ETH, the protocol says you can withdraw that ETH whenever you want. But with DeFi 2.0, the protocols say that if you contribute ETH, they're keeping it forever. That's the element that I don't like.
I see. Okay. I think DeFi 2.0, I think the end goal is actually very good. Just like what you have said, the vision is good. But we know what's happening in current DeFi 2.0 on the market, in market. Yeah, but I think Bancor V3, maybe there's a possibility for Bancor V3 to achieve that goal better than the other projects.
Yeah, that's exactly. Thank you so much for saying that. Yes, that's what we want. You know, we think that if we provide a good home for liquidity providers where they feel safe and where they're making decent returns, then that's kind of all that's required. We don't need to hold their liquidity hostage, right? It would be better if they want to leave it there voluntarily. You know, forcing them to leave it is in my view too aggressive. I would rather achieve what DeFi 2.0 is trying to achieve, but in like a friendly way, you know, and that's kind of that's what I'm hoping we get to. That's the goal I'm hoping that we get to.
I mentioned in the previous video I have did for Bancor that I think Bancor team is the most serious team about DeFi, trying to solve all these problems. So I really recommend all the audience to look into Bancor Network.
Thank you so much.
No worries. Okay. The next question, because we have talked a little bit about DAO just now, so I would like to dive a little bit more into DAO. Like as we know, Bancor is currently driven as a DAO. And we can see a lot of proposals are actively discussed in the governance forum. One of the most active DAOs I've seen, I think. Could you share some ideas that impressed you the most that come up from the community?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been really interesting to see just how much the community has actually shaped the project, I think, since its launch. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, I was once just one of the DAO community members, you know, putting proposals up on putting proposals up for the DAO to consider. And that's partially where our, token buyback and burn mechanism came from. So that was a DAO generated idea. That was partially external and then absorbed. But then other things like, the DAO process itself used to be entirely on chain, used to be on Ethereum. And that was extremely expensive, right? I think at the time that the DAO was being developed and was ready to launch, it was really still envisioned that users would pay the gas to vote, on different proposals. But then as, the Ethereum price skyrocketed and as gas fees skyrocketed as the blockchain became congested, it became perfectly apparent that it was no longer going to be financially sustainable to ask DAO members to vote, paying gas fees all the time. And so the move to Snapshot, which is I'm sure you're familiar with Snapshot if you've had a look at DAOs. But Snapshot was, a kind of a spin out of the Balancer research group that handles, DAO organization and offers new tools and things to assist DAOs, but more importantly, allows for signature-only voting, which means that there's no gas cost associated with it. The move of Bancor's DAO from Ethereum to Snapshot came from the DAO itself. This was not something that the Bancor team even wanted to do, right? It was, I'd say that a lot of the core contributors within the team are very decentralization maximalists, right? And so the idea of moving off of something as secure as Ethereum and trusting a centralized service like Snapshot wasn't intuitive. Although I'd say that in retrospect, everyone agrees that it was the right decision. But this is something that the DAO demanded that we do. It wasn't something that the team organized by themselves. So the DAO is actually, that middle letter stands for autonomous. And I would say that the Bancor DAO is really autonomous, right? It is constantly choosing which tokens it wants to whitelist, right? The insurance mechanism that we offer is, we're very selective about which assets we want to award that insurance to. And that's all generated by the DAO, right? In the beginning, we only had something like half a dozen pools. And so the 100-odd pools that have been added to the Bancor network since then have all been approved by, the government, by the Bancor DAO. And all of those proposals were organized and submitted by the DAO itself. So really everything that's happened, right? Everything that Bancor has become since it launched in in October of 2020 is attributable to the DAO, right? The core team has really just kind of been responding to the DAO's autonomy rather than guiding it. I'd say Bancor 3, the next version, is the first time that the core contributors have kind of wanted to build something sort of in secret, because there's a lot of features in Bancor 3 that we didn't want other projects to know about, right? We didn't want to get front run on a couple of the features. But really, this is the only thing that's happened over the last year that wasn't immediately involving the Bancor DAO's input. But even then, we're not going to release it unless the Bancor DAO votes on it. So, I'll be preparing a proposal with all of the features that the Bancor 3 has, all of the nuances, the economic analysis, and that's going to go into a final document that the Bancor DAO will then have to approve or disapprove via voting. So yeah, I would say that we've been overwhelmed with good ideas from the DAO. Everything from marketing ideas to the move to snapshot, which tokens to whitelist, the co-investment, all of the day-to-day runnings of the protocol. This has all been a DAO contribution, and I'm so proud of our community for running it as well as they do.
Another question, like additional. So because Bancor V3 wasn't voted by the DAO members, so are there some negative feedbacks regarding this matter?
Not yet, because we're not, we're still developing the contracts, but there will be a DAO proposal. And if they decide that Bancor 3 is not what they want, then we won't release it, right? Where you can think of the core contributors are we're kind of just like community members that are, that are kind of focused. Like we've been incentivized by the Bancor Foundation to just develop materials for the Bancor DAO to make decisions on. And so we develop it in secret, but we're still not committed to it. If the Bancor DAO decides that, there's something wrong with it or it needs more work, then we won't release it. We require their approval before we do anything.
Okay, understood. As just now you have mentioned, the gas fee on Ethereum is getting expensive, and that's why you moved to Snapshot. So here's another question. Like, do you ever think of Bancor, we can do some expansion to other chain or layer 2?
Yeah, Bancor does intend to expand the network to layer 2 and other L1 chains. Once we get the V3 contracts live on Ethereum L1, we've designed them in a way that's way simpler because of Omnipool. The architecture of the contracts and of the protocol is way simpler, so it's easier for us to build them and expand them onto other chains. But we definitely see the value of lower cost and faster transaction times, and this really is proven over the recent months that there are many users that prefer using DeFi on sort of these cheaper chains, and we definitely want to serve them on those chains. So we do have intentions to expand.
I also think that there are certain layer 2s and other layer 1s. They also have their own community and their own culture. And so, there are projects that Bancor is very close with. So, for example, the digital AX and Web3 fashion community is a big part of the Bancor DAO now. And they're chosen, their favorite layer 2 is Polygon, and so they have a lot of resources up there. This is probably one of the things that is going to influence which layer 2 the DAO decides to move to, right? So, for example, if you're already have a lot of experience using Polygon and you're a Bancor DAO voter, it might make sense that you want Bancor to move to Polygon. Whereas, the layer 2s like Arbitrum and Optimism, they have a much niche, like a more niche community. And I'd say that it's not clear that there's a huge representative cohort within the Bancor DAO that uses those layer 2s as frequently. Having said that, there's also a very large proportion of the Bancor cohort that likes using things like the Avalanche chain. right? And things like Phantom and other layer ones. And so, as Nate said, Bancor 3 is designed to be portable. And so if the DAO chooses to go to any of these chains, of course we will oblige, right? We just need to find someone to maintain the deployment on that chain. But yeah, we are excited to be moving to layer 2. It's not something that we are reluctant about. I'm really looking forward to going there.
Okay. I'm very excited for that as well. Like, me too. I'm looking forward to that. Let us know.
Which layer 2s are you using?
I don't really use layer 2, but I do. My favorite is also Polygon.
Okay, good to know.
Because of the gas fee, like, previously I think it was the cheapest among all.
It's also nice on Polygon because it's kind of got all of the same things that Ethereum has.
Yeah.
Right. Like you can still find Aave, like you can still get all of the tokens that you're familiar with. Whereas on some of the other layer 2s, it's not quite as developed yet. It's not quite as mature, and so you don't necessarily have access to the same resources that you would on ETH layer 1. So there's a lot that goes into this consideration. But I always like talking to people that are excited to move. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you as well, letting us know that you guys are planning to expand to other chains. Very exciting news. Next question, I want to know what do you guys expect or what do you think of the future of DeFi space?
Yeah, I mean that it remains to be seen. I think that there's a couple of things that I am really interested to watch and see how it develops. First of all, let me say I don't think DeFi is going anywhere. I think with the amount of capital that it has already attracted, and let's say the proven utility of the protocols that have been developed on Ethereum and on Avalanche and on everywhere else, that it would be odd, right, if suddenly at one point in the future these things didn't exist anymore. So I think that DeFi, it will persist. One of the things that I am watching very closely is how, for example, the United States regulator decides that they want to handle cryptocurrency and DeFi. I would say though that the United States is kind of the outlier at the moment, because we've already got very positive, very encouraging feedback from other world governments, right? So like the Australian government where I live recently published a report saying that they want Australia to be at the forefront of the cryptocurrency movement. We know that Singapore is extremely lenient and has some of the most progressive crypto taxation laws in the world. We know that the United Kingdom is also starting to look to cryptocurrency to capture some of the financial markets that it lost during Brexit. And basically I think most of the world's governments are very positive about DeFi and about cryptocurrency in general. And Bancor, is established in Switzerland. And so we often speak with the Swiss regulator and a bunch of Swiss institutions about DeFi, and everyone is super excited for the future. So it's absolutely going to progress, I think, and just continue to grow. But the United States is this weird, I'm not really sure what they're doing. And so I think that at best, they can probably delay the process or make it difficult for the American user base to interact. And I think that would be a shame. But I honestly don't think that that's going to happen. I think that eventually they're going to come to some agreement. They're going to decide on precisely how they want to handle it in a regulatory way, and that it's just going to be a very nice day for DeFi in general when the SEC decides that everything's okay and they give it a rubber stamp and everyone can continue to develop their businesses. But I think it's going to be a long. I don't think it's going to be a long time, but I think it's going to be a struggle to get there. Right? We need to continue to maintain that we think that decentralization is important. I do think that we need to push back against some of this KYC, AML sort of stuff. Remember that cryptocurrency was born from a protest against centralized control of monetary systems. And I think that it would be a shame if we lost that. Like, would it still be DeFi if we ended up just kind of giving over control to world governments? But at the same time, I actually don't think that world governments even want that. From my conversations with people, it really sounds like the regulator is kind of relieved, right? That they don't need to be responsible for monetary systems anymore, right? That they would rather it be handled in a more democratic way, right? It makes sense that in a civilized society, that people are, free to choose which cryptocurrencies they want to use, and how they want to trade and which assets that they hold. The old chief economist for Bancor was a man named Bernard Lieta, and he was one of the co-creators of the euro, right? The currency that replaced, all of the various currencies across Europe. And he was a very big proponent for the idea that that there should be more than one currency that people can trade with in any locality, right? The idea of having just fiat is a bad idea, and that we should have more flexibility there. And so he was, a very strong supporter of community currencies, which is a very, it's a topic that's very dear to Bancor. It's a very big part of our soul, because that's kind of where the project started. And so I think that DeFi in general, it's going to struggle through this regulatory phase, and then it's just going to open up into this, beautiful world of possibility after, the governments finally tell us what they want. But I think that, protocols like Bancor, protocols like Uniswap, like Aave, like Compound, the big, DeFi protocols, I think it's kind of up to us to make sure that we're having those conversations regularly, right? That we're talking to lobbyists maybe, or, even just institutional players, not necessarily directly to politicians or anything, but just that, we're making it known that this is a legitimate movement. And at the same time, I need to make sure that my peers aren't, wasting their money in cryptocurrency scams or something like that. It's bad for the space if it looks like it's run by criminals and scam artists, right? I think we need to make sure that that it looks welcoming and that it looks regulatable. And so that's kind of my expectation. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you were hoping that I would talk about, but that's probably the best answer I can give. Maybe Nate will have a different response.
I think the key theme for DeFi, I hope over the next 6 months to a year, is really going to be the mainstreaming of DeFi. I mean, we've already seen crypto go mainstream. All the celebrities now have NFTs and are talking about different tokens. And I think when people start to look at DeFi and the tools become easier to use for everyday users, we'll see a lot of that activity shift into DeFi. So whereas people, were buying their tokens on Coinbase or Binance in sort of these centralized environments, now they're increasingly going to want to buy them in these decentralized environments. So on DEXs, before the tokens are listed on the centralized exchanges, so they can get the 10, 20, 50x gains that you can get with these brand new tokens. And also, I think they'll embrace this idea of getting sort of passive yield, that if your tokens are sitting in your wallet, that they're not doing anything for you, and you want to put them to work inside of these DeFi ecosystems and generate this sort of returns and passive yield from staking them inside DeFi protocols. And I think in general, we'll start to see the value of products that really make it simple and easy for everyday users. If more users can participate in these ecosystems, it means that the liquidity is more distributed across way more actors. So it really becomes more resistant to censorship. If these tools are only accessible, like in modern day traditional finance, to the big institutions and funds, and they control everything, and that only they can implement these strategies, then it really becomes more easy to manipulate by these big whales and sophisticated actors. Liquidity or the ecosystem can really be censored, if these actors decide to withdraw their liquidity at any time. And so I think DeFi will really lean into this idea of open access as really a necessary feature of preserving its decentralization. And I think we'll follow a sort of similar path that we saw happen with tokens. When tokens started coming onto the scene in ICOs in 2017 and 2018, there was still sort of a lot of people were still hesitant about the value of tokens and the sort of network effects that you get from ownership. Now we can see over time that there is huge benefits to these protocols creating tokens and distributing their ownership and allowing people to participate in the systems as owners. And I think we're following a sort of similar path, whereas DeFi has sort of started to become a little more institutionalized and professionalized, but quickly we will see that the power of allowing sort of easy access and simplicity is actually a very big feature of those ecosystems that lean into simple, easy to use tools for everyday users who aren't necessarily professionals. I really think they'll see a lot of value in that, and Bancor is certainly headed down that path.
Well, thank you very much, guys. Thank you so much. And now this is the last question for today. And we want to know what is the future roadmap of Bancor?
Yeah, it's a huge question. And, we like to play our cards kind of close to the chest because we're always worried that we might give up too much of our competitive advantage, But what I can tell you is kind of generally how I expect the Bancor product to evolve and what it might look like. And so what I've told some of my family members, people that aren't necessarily familiar with cryptocurrency or DeFi, is in the late 1990s, early 2000s, I remember that there were a couple of these banking products released that were online only, right? And they called themselves high interest online savings accounts. And there was a Dutch company called ING Direct that released one in Australia, a Sander Group from New Zealand, Ubank in Australia, and other things. And it was basically, the idea behind it was that you can get this huge efficiency by not having to have a branch, right? Like a building that is the bank that you visit. And so the reduced overheads with regards to maintaining those customer accounts translate into higher yields for those users. But at the time, it was scary for people. It was like, what does this mean? Having just an online bank. Why can't I go and talk to a teller or get an ATM card or something? And people didn't understand it at first. But then after a few years, they were like, wow, it's really not that big a deal. I'll just put my money in this online bank account and I'm getting a higher interest than if I had it in my regular bank account. I think we're going to see something similar to that with cryptocurrency, where it's frightening at the moment, right? And using these protocols and products is frightening. But eventually we do have to get to that level of mainstream where you are, expecting that people with very little technical expertise are comfortable using these products. And there's a couple of things that we need to do to get there. One is that the user interface, it has to be so much easier, right? I'm hoping that you see this with our new user design for Bancor 3, is that we're trying to make everything, we're shrinking it down, right? When DeFi started and started to become popular, people were used to seeing sort of clunky UXs. They wanted to feel like they were, the experts in blockchain because they were. But eventually for mass adoption, you need people to be comfortable interacting with your product, even though they know nothing about blockchains. So there will be a couple of things that I think are going to be absolutely critical. One is that I think that the idea that you need to know anything about blockchains needs to eventually be retired. Right? when we have finally arrived, right, when we've kind of, when we're getting close, Bancor will never be finished, but when we're getting close to our current goals, I would suspect that users will be able to interact with the Bancor protocol much the same way that they interact with their online savings account. They won't have to know which chain they're using, right? They won't have to know about, they won't have to know about cryptographic security. They won't have to know how a blockchain is verified, any of that kind of thing. That they should just feel comfortable interacting with these things, and it will just work every time. And the idea that there's many blockchains that are running these products will be as as foreign to them as the idea that there's more than one internet provider in the background that's offering them the content that they're getting from the internet. So I think that I can't give you a precise product roadmap, but that's kind of where we're going, right? We want everything to be that level of effortless and safe, that it's no longer controversial, and that you don't need to spend hours on YouTube being tutored by strangers on the internet as to how to interact with these products. It should just be intuitive, and that's what we want, right? And so that's kind of the, let's say the high concept roadmap for Bancor is eventually people will just recommend it to their friends as, I get this great interest rate on this particular app, and so you just download the app and use it, rather than, do you know what DeFi is, and you need to buy a ledger, and you should watch these YouTube videos, and then come back to me next week and I'll show you how to use this thing. All of that needs to go away. And so that's the level of simplicity that we're aiming for.
In the meantime, I will say that as far as DeFi goes, I do think Bancor is the easiest and simplest way to just sit back and earn on the tokens that are in your wallet. So in the immediate roadmap, we're continually improving that front end experience. You can go today to Bancor.network and find what tokens are supported. We now support ETH, Link, Matic, and hundreds of tokens that you can earn on, and you can stake inside our pools and generate up to 60% APR in certain pools. And generally, you'll see some of the bigger tokens are around 5 to 10 to 20% annual percentage returns. And you can also trade. So the hottest new DeFi tokens, you can usually find them at some point on Bancor. And since we have the most liquidity in a lot of these tokens, you end up getting the best prices and this sort of smooth instant swap experience when you want to trade into these assets or take profits into ETH or a stable coin like USDC or USDT. And so, you can experience the platform today, again, Bancor.network. And then V3 is just around the corner. Again, it'll just make it easier to trade on Bancor and also to earn even more on your tokens while doing even less. We're expanding, as we said, to L2s and other chains early next year. And just to get involved in our DAO, anyone from anywhere in the world can just, without even owning any token, propose a proposal in our governance forum. It's gov.bancor.network. And as a community, we're very receptive to ideas on how to improve the protocol, how to partner and collaborate with other token communities. And so we really encourage anyone who wants to get involved with DeFi to get involved in our DAO. We're also quite active on our Telegram, on our Discord, and we also have WeChat accounts where you can participate in the community. So that's really the high level of the most immediate sort of roadmap and ways you can utilize the system.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Nate. I enjoyed talking to you, and thank you for your time.
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Choco. Really appreciate your time too.
Thank you. So guys, for more detail, if you want to know more when is Bancor V3 going to be released, follow Bancor Network on Twitter, on Telegram, on Discord to know more. Stay tuned for news. Thank you， 拜拜。
拜。
Bit.com 是目前全球排名前30的交易平台，不管是现货还是合约，都可以在 Bit.com 上交易。Bit.com 也是少数能为用户提供期权交易的平台。现在马上下载充值，就可以获得期间限定的 bonus。价值超过$200的奖励正在等着你。还有，所有 Bit.com 的用户只要在12月20日至1月11日期间充值或交易，就有机会瓜分价值$1000和$5000的抵扣金，还有赢取一台 iPad Pro 哦。现在就下载 Bit.com 参与活动，赢好礼。